right, welcome to the Turks. Cenk Grant experiment with you guys. So we have fire. I don't know if we have ice. So just everybody's be forewarned.
No ice.
There will be fire on this show. Okay, yeah. So with that being said, I proceed immediately to fire.
All right, let's do it. Only one day after we learned that President Joe Biden had struck a deal with Senate Minority Leader Mitch McConnell to install an anti-abortion federal judge in Kentucky. That's right, a federal judge, meaning it's a lifetime appointment. Biden's now saying that he would like to see a carve out in the legislative filibuster in the Senate in order to codify reproductive rights through legislation. That would be fantastic, except he knows that's not gonna happen. Saying things is one way to go about it. Fighting for what you're saying is something entirely different. He's not gonna fight for that. And we have another update, which we'll get to in just a second. But first, let's go to this video featuring Joe Biden, our feckless, weak, pathetic president, speaking at a NATO summit. Let's watch.
I believe we have to codify Roe v. Wade in the law. And the way to do that is to make sure the Congress votes to do that. And if the filibuster gets in the way, it's like voting rights. It should be, we provide an exception for this, require an exception to the filibuster for this action.
Now, Biden also called for a carve out in the filibuster, specifically for the voting rights bill. And I give you that context so you can know what to expect after he made this very strong statement at the NATO summit, right? He loves to talk, but he never fights for his agenda. He never fights for what he claims to be supportive of, including the Build Back Better agenda. He was definitely willing to separate out the public infrastructure from the social spending components of his own agenda to ensure its failure later, and it did fail. He said this when it came to voting rights, and of course, there was no exception made for the voting rights bill. He just said what he wanted. He knew people wanted him to say what people wanted to hear, but he didn't fight for it. And look, he just wants to talk and then go back to his nap. His nice, long, peaceful nap, while the rest of us suffer the consequences of having no one in the White House represent us. As our rights are rolled back, he's over there at a NATO summit saying, yeah, maybe there should be a carve out for the filibuster. I mean, I've been the filibuster's #1 defender because of course it's a convenient excuse for why Democrats can't get a damn thing accomplished. But let me just tell people what they want to hear and say there should be a carve out for reproductive rights. But of course, he's not gonna fight for it, so no cookies for him. Now, Biden's previous call for a filibuster exception for voting rights legislation failed to gain traction because he didn't fight for it. All 50 Democrats would need to support the change, and Senators Joe Manchin and Kyrsten Sinema have expressed concerns about altering the filibuster. In fact, in response to what Joe Biden said during the NATO summit, I mean, it's perfect, right? He could always rely on his good friend Kyrsten Sinema. She said, no, I would not agree to a carve out in order to codify Roe v. Wade, to codify reproductive rights. That's what Kyrsten Sinema, who ran as a progressive, is doing because that corporate cash is so sweet. And if you chip away at that filibuster, oh my God, maybe in the future they do away with it, meaning that Democrats wouldn't have a convenient excuse to fail in passing legislation that their corporate donors are not in favor of.
Okay, so what does it mean to fight for it? Because we often say that, and in Washington they're like, have one of two reactions to this. One is aghast. How you shouldn't fight for anything. You should be civil. Take your losses and just go crawl in a cave like sleepy Joe Biden, and they'll love you in Washington, right? Or the other reaction, they're like, what's that for? Just venting? Oh, progressives aren't practical at all. No, practical politics is carrots and sticks. Otherwise, you're doing literally nothing, right? So one thing you could do is you could say, hey, you know what? I really want this voting rights or women's rights bill so bad that I'm willing to give you carrots, Manchin, Sinema. What do you need? You're both prostitutes for donors, so you want me to get you $20 million in donor money. Since you're prostitutes, and not for your body, but for your votes, I'll get you money. I'll get you 20 million, I'll get you 200 million. What do you need? Because I can't have abortion be illegal. You know it's illegal in Michigan right now, today as we speak? That they passed a law decades ago, and it went into effect immediately as soon as Roe was overturned. So people can't get abortions all across the country now. What kind of bribe do you need? So that would be a carrot. A stick would be, hey, listen, you're not voting for me on anything, right? You're not on Build Back Better, not on voting rights, not on women's. You're not voting with me on anything. In fact, the story that Anna started with, Biden did a secret deal with Mitch McConnell. He gave Mitch McConnell a horrible right-wing anti-abortion judge. We don't know what he got in return. My likely guess is zero, because he's Biden and he's a moron. His entire career has given Mitch McConnell the greatest deals on earth because he's actually a Republican anyway. But ostensibly the deal is, hey, loosen your tight grip on federal nominations.
Yeah.
Now wait a minute, why would you need that if you had Sinema and Manchin on your side? Because whenever I ask a Democrat, what the hell do we need Sinema and Manchin for? How are they a Democrat if they're blocking literally every single Democratic priority? And their fallback answer is, oh, no, you don't know, secretly, other federal judges, they're really helping us. Really? Because Biden just had to do a deal with McConnell, because apparently Manchin and Sinema aren't even helping on that. So that gives you room to put pressure on them and say, hey, you're not voting with me anyway, so you know what I'm gonna do? I'm gonna take that $20 or $200 million, because Biden has unlimited access to the donors, and I'm gonna give it to your primary opponent. That's called political pressure. I'm gonna drive down your polling numbers by doing the bully pulpit. Biden has done none of that, none, zero. You know why? Because he doesn't care. So this is just window dressing.
100%. All it is, all right, look. By the way, I don't think it was a mistake that Biden made that statement a day after we learned the truth about that secret deal that he struck with Mitch McConnell. People are upset, they should be upset. Of course, you have the typical moderates and centrists, really corporate Democrat enablers on Twitter trying to provide cover for what Biden's doing. I mean, on one hand, he talks about, it's so important that we protect women's reproductive rights. On the other hand, he's installing judges who will enjoy a lifetime federal judgeship and have a record of fighting against reproductive rights. That is what Biden's doing behind closed doors. And you have all these moderates and centrists providing cover for that. I mean, whose side are you on? What's the point in getting Democrats elected if they're just gonna carry out the same garbage that we see from the right wing? And then they turn around, they accuse us of wanting Republicans in office. No, actually, I want the opposite. I would like Democrats to stop posing as Democrats and stop enabling the worst Republicans in this country, including Mitch McConnell. If you're defending Biden, chumming it up with Mitch McConnell, you ain't on the right team. Sit down.
Okay.
And one other thing I want to mention, it's a convenient time for Biden as well, because it's one thing to say you want to carve out for the filibuster. It's another thing to refuse to fight for it. And then there's something else that drew some attention. This is a tweet from Jordan Zacharin. He writes, I'm sure it was bad timing, but woof, Biden calling for a filibuster carve out now that Patrick Leahy is hurt and Democrats only have 49 senators for the foreseeable future is rough.
It doesn't matter. He would have never called, if he thought it could work, he wouldn't have called for it. Okay,
totally. I agree. So
every reporter that tells you otherwise is just doing defense for him. All right, but I want to go to Reuters that actually wrote a really great piece about this. One of the things that happened was 30 Democratic senators wrote a letter to Biden asking for bold action. And they said, don't you have a plan for fighting back against Roe v. Wade? And Reuters explains, but the White House is pursuing a more limited set of policy responses while urging voters and Congress to act. Biden and officials are concerned that more radical moves would be politically polarizing ahead of November's midterm elections, undermining public trust in institutions like the Supreme Court. You idiot, we don't trust the Supreme Court. Asking us to trust it more is dumb. They did Citizens United, they overturned Roe v. Wade, they overturned gun laws in New York. Politically polarizing moron. You are the head of the Democratic Party. The other party's the Republican Party. You're supposed to fight them. No, he's actively trying to find a way to help his Republican friends under the guise of, I wouldn't want to be politically polarizing by fighting them. Limited policy options.
He's so pathetic. The Democratic Party is an embarrassment. And as our rights are being stripped away from us as we speak, they're sitting in their ivory towers feeling offended that we would dare criticize the lack of leadership that we're experiencing right now in the face of religious zealots in this country who want to force their religious beliefs on all of us, including controlling our bodies, controlling our relationships, controlling who we're intimate with in the bedroom, how we're intimate with our partners in the bedroom. They're absolute creeps, and we have no one protecting us from the desires of these creeps and perverts who spend all their time obsessing over our personal lives, okay? By the way, that same Reuters piece gives us some more details. For instance, the White House has knocked down talk for some lawmakers to protect abortion access on federal lands, arguing that it would have too many unintended consequences. Oh wow, what are the unintended consequences? Very curious about that. The White House is worried the federal government wouldn't be able to keep them safe on or off the property, two sources explained. What the hell does that even mean? The federal government with its unlimited resources for other countries, like any other country, unlimited resources in terms of foreign aid, in terms of military weaponry. We really want to keep Ukrainians safe. But when it comes to Americans who need safe access to abortion, the federal government doesn't have the capacity to do that? Not buying it. Not buying it. There's more. What about reforming SCOTUS, right? What about doing something about the Supreme Court? Privately, Biden has expressed skepticism about a wide range of Supreme Court reform proposals, including restricting the court's power, setting term limits for justices, and strengthening ethics and transparency rules. Wow, even strengthening ethics and transparency rules is a bridge too far for Sleepy Joe. Let me continue. And this is according to a person involved in the conversations weeks prior to the most recent Supreme Court decision. And at that time, it was Roe v. Wade's reversal. And Cenk, he's shocked. He is shocked. Biden is amazed that members of the Democratic Party keep asking him, are you really planning to run for re-election in 2024? Because he's a disaster, but he's completely in the dark about it. So last two graphics here. Biden has been eager for signs of loyalty, and they have been few and far between because he's a failure. Facing intensifying skepticism about his capacity to run for re-election when he will be nearly 82, the president and his top aides have been stung by questions about his plans, irritated at what they see as a lack of respect from their party and the press, which by the way, the press provides cover for this loser day in, day out. Let's keep it real. Okay, I can't even believe that he's offended considering how friendly the press is to him. And determined to tamp down suggestions that he's effectively a lame duck a year and a half into his administration, he absolutely is. What has he accomplished? Tell me.
Yeah, guys, I told you that a long time ago that his administration was already over. The minute they didn't reform the filibuster, it was done. They can't pass a single thing. The only thing they can pass is something that is a Republican bill, because that's the only way to get Republican votes. So he might pass further Republican bills, and by the way, who's in charge? The Democrats have both House of Congress and the presidency. Does it look like it? We just lost Roe. We've lost voting rights. He's giving Mitch McConnell the most extreme judges that Trump did. The infrastructure bill was a Republican bill. The COVID relief bill, the Republicans also did. We literally got nothing Democratic done, nothing. Meanwhile, the Republicans made huge gains under Biden.
Under Biden.
And he can't figure it out. And guys, if you're wondering, like, no, they're kidding, right? I mean, or they're doing some sort of public pressure. No, they genuinely believe it. In Washington, they think it is the biggest affront. How dare you question the Democratic president, whether you're in the party or you're a member of the press. Look at the assumption built into that went into the New York Times, that it is offensive if the press questions a Democratic president.
Yep.
So that is their assumption. That's why they're flabbergasted. What is going on here? The president in his infinite weakness has been slightly criticized. Yeah, no, there are no rules, Biden. You're not getting it. We're not gonna sit there and go, oh, you did great things when you didn't do a goddamn thing. So sad day for you, cry all day long. Oh no, progressives are so mean. You know what they're using now? Last thing. By the way, I should also note, Manchester Cinema came out just before we got started on the show saying, no, of course we're not gonna reform the filibuster for women's rights. What do you think, it's the stock market? They both made an exception for the debt ceiling, because that would have affected the stock market and their personal money.
They love those carve-outs.
Yeah, But a carve out for filibusters, they're like, we just don't care about women's rights. Sinema's like, I don't care.
They don't care.
I don't care.
Anyone.
My donors don't want me to get rid of the filibuster.
They don't care about anyone, okay? They don't care about coal workers. They don't care about women. They don't care about gay people. They don't care about transgender people. They don't care about the environment. They don't care about anything other than what they can do to use their position of power to enrich themselves. When Cenk referred to them as prostitutes, he was correct. These people are whores for corporate money. That is it. Okay, Manchin, Sinema, and a whole host of other corporate politicians, both in the Republican Party and the Democratic Party. It's time to call a spade a spade. This is who these people are. They don't represent us. They're in positions of power specifically to collect that corporate money, to trade individual stocks based on insider information that no one else is privy to. They just want to enrich themselves. This system is set up to attract the absolute worst people in positions of power. And it is really, really hard to find a politician who is principled enough to withstand all of that pressure to be a corporate, disgusting goon in our government.
So the last thing I was gonna say about the presidential race is, in the New York Times article, Biden uses a really interesting reason why Democrats should get behind him for the presidency. His handlers say to the press, now remember, if Biden doesn't run, Kamala Harris is weak, so she might lose to someone from the left. Wait, isn't the Democratic Party supposed to be on the left? No, his best excuse is, now remember, if I step down, we might not have a right-wing Democrat win. Well, okay, there you have it. Perfect explanation for the current corrupt state of the Democratic Party. Anyone who doesn't understand the Democratic Party is completely corrupted by corporate donors, isn't paying attention, or is actively lying to you.
Let's keep going. I want to talk about Cuellar, because Cuellar had an interview with Axios that's worth discussing. So. Conservative Democrat Henry Cuellar, who's a congressman from Texas, and also happens to be anti-choice, pro-guns, and has voted along with Trump and the Republicans more than he has with Democrats, is very upset at the criticism he's been getting from progressive members of his party. So after the primaries took place in Texas, he feels free now, free enough to speak to Axios and tell them what he thinks about the progressive wing of the Democratic Party. Cuellar, a South Texas Democrat who narrowly survived a bruising primary challenge this month, lashed out at AOC and other progressives, insisting it's time for his party to let me be me. So let's discuss just briefly what it means to be Henry Cuellar, okay? A man who was recently raided, both his home and his office, by the FBI because of his shady dealings with a foreign government, Azerbaijan to be specific. That's who Henry Cuellar is, but don't talk about, you just let him be him and don't criticize him for that kind of corruption and possible criminality. It would be so wrong to do so. Henry Cuellar is the man who was supported by and endorsed by Democratic leadership after the Roe reversal leak happened prior to it officially being the ruling of the Supreme Court. And he's anti-choice, is not in favor of giving women the right to make decisions about their own bodies. That's who Henry Cuellar is. Henry, we're just talking about who you are. We're just talking about who you are. We're just telling our audience what a massive piece of you are. Is that so wrong? Progressives are the problem? Really?
But wait a minute, who's stopping you from being you? Did anyone tackle you before a vote? No, you're allowed to vote, and you have voted right wing in all those instances. He voted to defund Planned Parenthood. He's total Republican, right? So, and nobody stopped him. Not only did they not stop him, the Speaker of the House, the head of the Democratic Party in the House, Nancy Pelosi, went and actively campaigned for him. James Clyburn, the House whip, the #3 Democrat in the House, actively campaigned for Cuellar. Who the hell is stopping you? What he means is, why don't you have them shut up already?
Don't be so mean to me.
Yeah, no, the progressives, I get to vote any way I want. I get 100% of Democratic leadership support. I get funding from the Democrats.
That's right.
But why are they allowing these young women to talk? Why don't they shut them up and make sure that no progressive is ever allowed to say anything or oppose me in all my right-wing votes. That's what he means by let me be me.
Cuellar said progressives' demands for the party to move left on immigration, God forbid, gun rights, God forbid, and other issues risk big losses in November and beyond. Let's pause for a second. Pause. You are now yes, he's the incumbent. He won the primary again, very, very close race, by the way. Just literally a couple hundred votes made the difference. Jessica Cisneros would have been a far better candidate because she's not, she doesn't have the problem of a FBI raid hanging over her head in the general. And this man is sitting there telling us what the best strategy is to keep Democrats in power? Are you kidding me right now? You are a liability to the Democratic Party, but since you're corrupt, much like Democratic leadership, they decided to endorse you, support you, promote you, knowing that you're a liability, knowing that the Republican who's running against you is gonna use that FBI raid against you, as he should. It would be political malpractice not to.
Yeah, and if and when he loses that race, how will Washington react? Will they say, oh, it turns out going right wing didn't work at all. It turns out going corrupt didn't work at all. No, MSNBC will hire him and he'll tell everybody how to win elections after he lost his. You think, come on, Jake, that's hyperbole. No, that's literally what they did with Claire McCaskill. Yep. She ran as a Republican light, got her ass handed to her when she could have easily won that race. And then MSNBC hired her to tell us how to win elections. And then the rest of Washington will tell us that Nancy Pelosi was a master legislator. But to be fair to them on that one, well, that is if there is a fair point there, because either way, the Republicans hold that seat, and that's what Nancy Pelosi wants.
Yeah. Now, and look, keep in mind, they love, the mainstream Democratic Party loves to install all these excuses within the system so they can tell us why they failed to accomplish a damn thing. So when Obama had a supermajority in the Senate and could have codified Roe v. Wade to ensure that even if the Supreme Court overturns Roe, we would still have our reproductive rights intact, he decided to not make it a legislative priority. And the excuse that we hear now from people like Nancy Pelosi and other establishment Democrats is, well, what could he do? Yes, he had a super majority, meaning that the legislative filibuster wasn't a problem. They had enough Democrats, but there were a lot of conservative Democrats. You know, the kind of conservative Democrats that we endorse, support, and promote above progressives. Because we like to have those convenient excuses. We're not here to represent you. We're not here to look out for you. We're not here to protect you. We're not here to fight for you. The corporate Democrats are just there to carry out the wishes of corporate America and to enrich themselves. That is all they do, period. The bipartisan infrastructure bill was a corporate giveaway, a corporate handout. That's the reason why it passed. And that is the only thing that they can turn to cite an accomplishment under the Biden administration. They're pathetic, they're embarrassing, they don't represent us. And if moderate Democrat voters are watching this and their feelings are hurt, I love your tears. I hope you cry more because you're part of the problem. You have supported a system. People say it's a duopoly. It's not a duopoly. We only have Republicans controlling this country. Which is why today, even with Democrats in charge, it feels like we have Republicans in charge. Our rights have been rolled back under Democratic leadership, and you're part of the problem.
Yeah, anybody who votes for a moderate Democrat is basically voting for a Republican. And then the press has the temerity to paint progressives as not democratic enough. But we actually are in favor of democratic positions, and the corporate Democrats are against democratic positions.
Exactly.
They're like, yeah, but no, we're gonna call them more democratic. Wait, we wanna fight Republicans. So let me go to graphic 7 to prove my case. So in the 115th Congress, Cuellar voted with Trump 69% of the time, according to 538. Well, if you vote with Trump 7 out of 10 times, you might be a Republican, okay? And then they say, no, he's the better Democrat. In fact, he says that. I'm gonna go to graphic 3. So in graphic 3, as he's talking to Axios, he says, of course I have a place in the Democratic Party. The question is, do those people have a place in the Democratic Party, referring to AOC and the Justice Democrats? So if you vote with Trump 7 out of 10 times, he says, then the Democratic Party is perfect for you. But if you're opposing Trump and you're opposing the right wing, then no, the Democratic Party has no place for you and you should be banished. Okay, well, unfortunately, he's fairly accurate about how Democratic leadership feels. That's exactly why they supported him instead of the progressive.
We got to take a break. When we come back, we've got some more bad news coming from this judicial coup, and it pertains to climate change. So stick around, we've got that story and more coming right up.
Back on TYT, Cenk, Anna, and Mark with you guys. Mark Oleg just joined by hitting the join button below on YouTube. Thank you, tyt.com/join for everybody else. Come join the fight. Be part of a positive change. Anna.
Well, the Supreme Court is continuing with its terrible rulings, continuing with this trend of a judicial coup. The Supreme Court has just restricted the Environmental Protection Agency's ability to effectively respond to climate-related matters. Now, what was the issue at hand? Well, in a 6-3 decision, of course, divided among ideological lines, the majority, the conservative majority, ruled that Congress did not authorize the EPA to induce a shift to cleaner energy sources using the approach that an Obama-era regulation sought to. At issue in the case was language in the Clean Air Act that enables EPA to regulate power plants using a best system of emissions reduction and what specifically that system can entail. So the idea here by the Obama administration was to honestly, slowly but surely move the country away from dirty fossil fuels, polluting fossil fuels, and toward renewable energy. And remember, Congress has delegated that power to the Environmental Protection Bureau. But what the Supreme Court is arguing here is, well, the EPA doesn't have this kind of power. This is something that needs to be done through Congress, except Congress, again, under the Obama administration, delegated this to the EPA, but they're pretending like that didn't happen. So in the majority opinion penned by Chief Justice John Roberts, they determined that the Obama administration's use of a system that involved moving away from carbon-intensive coal plants and toward natural gas and renewables did not qualify. Okay, so Roberts wrote that the plan, which involved regulating the power system as a whole instead of regulating individual plants, was an unprecedented view of the EPA's authority that involved a fundamental revision of the statute, changing it from one sort of scheme of regulation into an entirely different kind. He also wrote that Congress did not grant EPA, this is not true by the way, the authority to devise emissions caps based on the generation shifting approach the agency took in the Clean Power Plan. Again, that's according to the majority opinion, referring to the Obama era power plant regulation.
Okay, so now let me give you context. In order to get down to about 1.5 degrees Celsius gain, which is the Paris Climate Accords, that is what we can max out at before the planet starts to burn down. Well, it's in the middle of burning down as it is anyway. This is what all the scientists in the world say. So right now, if we don't do anything else, which is where we are, what are we gonna get to instead? We're gonna go blow past that 1.5 degrees Celsius, extra since the Industrial Revolution in the Earth's average temperature. We're gonna go past 2 degrees where they say, no, warning, warning, warning. Do not go past 2 degrees Celsius extra on average for the whole world. We're now slated to go to 3.2 degrees Celsius more. That is an epic disaster. So in order to prevent that, Biden had said that he was going to have his climate goals was a 50% cut in economy-wide greenhouse gas emissions by 2030. Okay, and a lot of suckers in Washington believed him. To this day, you'll still get like even some progressive leaders going, "Oh no, Biden's going to do it." When?
It's ridiculous.
And they're like, "Oh no, he's the negotiations for Build Back Better are on again secretly with Manchin."
Oh yeah. No, totally, yeah.
And so we're actually going to get big climate change. Are you kidding me? We already did a story about it. Leaks from that says that they're actually going to help fossil fuel industry, not rein it in. Why? Because Manchin literally is a owner of a fossil fuel company. He's made $5 million in the last 10 years. God knows how much more than that. He makes $500,000 a year. His son runs that company. And all of his donors are fossil fuel companies. Manchin's not gonna give you a bill that reduces carbon emissions, it's gonna do the opposite. So, okay, so now, why? Why do all these politicians say one thing and do something completely different? Well, that's easily explained. Let's go to graphic 6. This is from The Hill. To discourage Congress from supporting President Biden's climate action agenda, the 6 biggest oil and gas companies spent nearly $120 million on 746 lobbyists last year, according to Taxpayers for Common Sense. As of April, they spent almost $50 million on campaign contributions to candidates in this year's elections. That's just through the first 4 months that they spent $50 million on the directly bribing the campaigns, and then the $120 million on lobbying. Well, why do you think politicians do things that are intensely unpopular? Actually doing something about climate change is actually very popular in the polling. About 2/3 of the country want it. Yes, you have a very loud, vocal 1/3 of the country that's Republican that's like, no, me want to be caveman. We go back into caves. But 2/3 of the country wants it, so why don't they do it? Because they got bribed. It's not at all complicated. So what do they get in return, and what do we have to deal with because of the costs? You know, they're always talking about deficits and balanced budgets, and we're so worried about debt. Well, back to The Hill, climate-related weather disasters in the US have already cost $765 billion in the last 5 years, including $145 billion last year. So where the hell's the money? So oil companies, you caused that damage. We had to pay, us taxpayers had to pay $145 billion in damage just last year. Oh, right, they already spent $170 million bribing the politicians so they could avoid $145 billion in costs and dump it on us after causing the disaster in the first place.
Bingo, yep.
It's just bribery. Every reporter that covers it up is a goddamn liar.
All right, let's move on to our next story. I want to talk about these GOP creeps who have been obsessively thinking about what we do in our personal lives, what we do with our bodies, and this individual is no exception. Mississippi's Republican Speaker of the House has made clear that girls as young as 12 who get pregnant as a result of incest, meaning a family member molesting and raping them, should be forced through that pregnancy and to carry that pregnancy to term. A 12-year-old. Now let's talk about how this all went down. It all started when an Associated Press reporter by the name of Emily Pettis had asked him, hey, what about this situation? You guys are super restrictive in regard to abortion in the state of Mississippi, but what about a case involving incest? Well, Mississippi's ban on abortion does not include an exception for incest, Gunn said. And Philip Gunn is the name of the Mississippi Speaker of the House. As the Free Press, Ashton Pittman reports, I don't know that will be changed. Asked if he believes the legislature should revisit that part of the law, the speaker responded, personally, no, I do not. He says, I believe life begins at conception. Every life is valuable, and those are my personal beliefs. Now, he was pressed on this issue further by another reporter. Let's hear how that went down.
So that 12-year-old child was molested by her father on bullshit. So she carried that child to her.
That is my personal belief. I believe life begins at conception.
He believes life begins at conception. So even before a fertilized egg implants on the uterine wall, okay? So if that is a life, a human life that apparently deserves more rights than viable, living, breathing human beings outside the womb have, what happens if that egg fails to attach itself to the uterine wall? I know that I'm using words about human anatomy that he might not understand, so I apologize. Maybe I should speak a little more slowly so he could look these things up. But should that woman be charged for murder if her body rejects that fertilized egg? I mean, it's life at the moment of conception, right? And why do we start there? Why don't we start with your ball sack, okay? What happens with all that sperm that you be spilling on the ground? In your bed sheets when you have a wet dream? I think you're a giant murderer. We need to investigate. Yep. There needs to be surveillance cameras in his bedroom. What's going on with that? What's happening to all those human lives? I mean, these people are a joke. And look, that might sound like a ridiculous extreme argument, right? But let's take a little trip to Mississippi and really examine whether this Republican leader in that state cares about human lives. Turns out that infant mortality is highest in the great state of Mississippi. They care about babies so much that they allow so many of them to die in Mississippi. So you're looking at a chart that was put together by the CDC. This is based on data from 2020. And the darker blue the state's coloring is, the more infant deaths they have. And as you can notice, Mississippi is dark blue, okay?
All of the worst in the land are Republican states.
Yeah.
This is an infant mortality. The issue that they claim is their #1 issue, saving the lives of children.
Yeah.
They are the absolute worst in, because they don't actually care about that.
Let's take a look at this list. As you can see, Mississippi comes in at #1 when it comes to infant mortality. So the death rate, 8.27, is out of 1,000 live births. So out of 1,000 live births, 8.27 infants die. Coming in at second, unsurprisingly, Louisiana. Third, West Virginia. Fourth, Arkansas. Fifth, Alabama. And then look, oh wow, South Dakota also makes it on that list.
All deep red states don't care about children's lives one bit. All they care about is controlling women's bodies. And by the way, one of the senators from Louisiana, who came in #2 worst, said, yeah, but that's only if you factor in black people. I mean, if you just look at white folks, we do relatively okay.
No, you don't actually.
But by the way, I mean, look at how callous that is.
No.
Oh, black babies dying, I don't care at all. Well, the only relevant people are white people, and we do mediocre in that. No, these people are disgusting and sick.
Are they providing health care for people who can't afford it in the state of Mississippi? No. In fact, we talked about South Dakota briefly. I want to go to South Dakota because Gunn is not the only Republican to support no exceptions to legal abortions. Noem, meaning Kristi Noem, the governor of South Dakota, echoed the sentiment, telling CBS's Face the Nation on Sunday that she did not support legal abortion in cases of rape. The governor, considered a potential GOP presidential contender in 2024, get this, cited the importance of building stronger families. Hold on, what? So, are you suggesting that women should be forced to carry their rapist baby and give birth to their rapist baby to build a strong family with the rapist and the rapist baby? Is that what you're saying? That's your idea of a strong family? That's your idea of a strong family. These people are creeps. Be clear about that. They're perverts and they're creeps, okay? Taking the side of the person who got a family member impregnated through incest, being more supportive of what the rapist has done in impregnating a woman. Even in the case of Mississippi, a girl as young as 12. Who cares? I mean, these are the kind of states that were in favor of child marriage as well, by the way.
Yeah, perverts, all of them. If you're a Republican, if I meet you, I think pervert. But listen to that analogy there. So she says no exception for incest, it'll make the family stronger. So in the question they asked Gunn, so if a 12-year-old is raped by her uncle, and you want her to carry it to term, and he's like, yes. So she would be pregnant while she's 12, she would deliver presumably around the age of 13, and the baby would be both her child and her cousin. Maybe that's what Noem means by a stronger family. Because boy, she would have many ties to that child. This is the sick way that Republicans think. They think that's no big deal at all. Forcing a 12-year-old girl to carry a rapist child is no big deal. But you want me to give $2 extra for infant mortality to save babies' lives? Nah, I want to give it to the rich instead.
And what happens after the babies are born? If they're lucky enough to survive in a state like Mississippi, what happens? Like, what does their life look like if they were born into a situation where the mother has no means, doesn't have the resources necessary to support that child? Well, in the annual Annie E. Casey Foundation Kids Count report, Mississippi maintains its 48th ranking for overall child well-being, with 27% of its children living in poverty in 2017. And let's pause for a second, because I bring up these kinds of statistics often, and sometimes the voters in Mississippi get offended because they think that we're making fun of them. No, I'm not making fun of you. The point I'm trying to make is the politicians that you are electing into office do not care about you. They don't care about your family. They don't care about little children. They don't care about anything other than their position of power, other than campaigning on whatever manufactured culture war narrative they want to lean on to gain their positions of power or keep their positions of power. And they leave you in the dark. They leave you in the dust. You're suffering. You can't feed yourself. You can't feed your family. You can't provide a roof over your head. And they distract you with all sorts of culture war, fear mongering. So you don't pay attention to the fact that they're robbing you blind. Your representatives aren't representing you. I want you to fight for yourself and actually find lawmakers or support lawmakers who care about getting you out of a bad situation, including the extreme poverty you're facing in this state. Let's give you more statistics, because that was from 2017. You deserve, more recent statistics. So let's look at what's going on now. Mississippi, Louisiana are among these states with most children living in poverty. So situation hasn't gotten much better. So this is data from 2020. And Mississippi, when it comes to child poverty, it says 22nd most, because that's just looking at the raw number of people living in poverty in the state. But if you look at the rate per capita, meaning the number of people living in poverty, children living in poverty in this case, 28.1% of children in Mississippi are living in poverty, the highest. So the situation has actually devolved. They went from 48, the 48th state with child poverty to now the highest state with child poverty. Overall poverty rate in the state is nearly 20%. Families with annual incomes below $10,000, 5.7%.
Second highest in the country. Okay, so last two things for me. Child poverty rate #1 in Mississippi. That's and they actively choose every single year not to give money to that category. They say no, we would rather save it for tax cuts for the rich. And then they say we care about children. Care about children. We're not going to fund it at all. Give the money to the rich. Give the money to the rich. Care about kids. Get the women. Control their bodies. Make sure they don't do anything. The government now owns their body in Mississippi. Now, guys, let me ask you last question. If you're in Mississippi or any of these red states now where abortion is illegal, they say, well, we got to control a woman's body for 9 months to protect a life. Okay, but there's people who need transplants, like kidney transplants, right? What if we take guys' bodies for just 9 hours, not even 9 months?
No, we should. I mean, right to life. Right to life.
Right to life.
So many people need kidney transplants.
I mean, there's tens of thousands of people on that list, and every one of them will have life or death depending on what the government does.
Government should force kidney donations.
And since we already take women's bodies for other issues regarding life, in your opinion, why can't we just only take men's bodies just for 9 hours? It's so much more fair. Take their kidneys and give it to someone, and it'll say they're still alive. They only take one kidney. So both of you are alive. You got 2 lives for the price of 1. And that's much less intrusive. Why don't we do that for guys? Oh no, freedom. Well, what about women's freedom? I don't care. That's what I thought.
They couldn't even be bothered to temporarily wear a mask over their faces to prevent the spread of a contagious and lethal virus. They are not pro-life. They love to exploit these issues for political power. They love to control women. They love to, more importantly, punish women. Punish women, that is what this is about. And I think everything else that they get involved in that leads to death in their states makes it abundantly clear that they never cared about human lives to begin with. We gotta take a break. We'll come right back with some more news.
All right, back on Young Turks, Cenk, Anna, and Tamir Shamel. They just joined by hitting the join button below on YouTube. We appreciate it. It's right underneath the video, super easy. And for everybody else, tyt.com/join. Come join us, let's go fight together. Anna.
Let's talk a little bit about what's happening with union organizers over at Starbucks, because they put a lot on the line and some of them unfortunately end up paying the price. Earlier this month, Victoria Conklin successfully organized her Starbucks store in Buffalo, New York, meaning they were able to unionize. But unfortunately, that turned her into a target by her employers, And all they needed was one little mistake to fire her. And sure enough, that's what happened. She was recently fired by management in a clear case, if you ask me, of retaliation. Now, the management's reason for firing her was absurd. She says, they fired me because they scheduled me to do a clopening, which is when you close the store and open it the next morning. And I overslept and I was late by 20 minutes. But the store opened on time. We didn't lose any customers or anything. The only thing I couldn't serve when we opened was iced tea because it takes about 5 minutes to steep. So accidents happen. It's not the end of the world. And she had never been late in the 5 years that she had worked there, ever. So this is not like some sort of issue they had with her where they had given her warnings and then eventually they just couldn't take it anymore. No, it was just the one time she was late and they scheduled her in a way that I think should be banned, right? Where you close the store. And by the way, I worked as a barista for Coffee Bean and Tea Leaf. I've had that shift, right? I close the store and then I have to be back. It feels like a few hours later, you barely get any time to sleep. And so I luckily am a morning person and I was able to wake up. But some people oversleep because it is an impossible and difficult schedule. Nonetheless, when Starbucks workers first started to unionize, Victoria actually was not in favor of that effort. But after witnessing how Starbucks was engaging in vicious union busting, she changed her mind. From August to November of 2021, Conklin's store was regularly visited by Starbucks's then president, Roseanne Williams, who frequently asked her what changes she hoped to see in the store, then orchestrated improvements that addressed the issues. Later, though, she learned that what Williams was doing was known as soliciting grievances, which is actually illegal during union campaigns under NLRB rules. That's the National Labor Relations Board. Now, management instructed her not to let workers form a union or to allow workers from union stores to take shifts at their store. She says, quote, I was supposed to come up with a reason that they couldn't make the shift. Then my manager would just make a bunch of illegal comments like, quote, I don't want union people working here, or these union people are so annoying, thank God it's never gonna come here. But it turns out it did end up coming there with the help of Conklin organizing this. Starbucks workers at the Elmwood location went on strike to protest the company's mask policy, and soon Conklin joined them. I was told that you can't ask customers to wear masks, and I was like, I don't think so. And so I went to the picket line and signed my union card. Cenk.
Okay, so context matters, especially in cases like this. So if an employee's doing something wrong consistently, like she shows up 20 minutes late every day, every other day, or consistently in some way, and then she goes, hey, I'm a union organizer, you can't fire me. No, that's BS, right? You do it once in 5 years and they fire you, then it's super obvious what's happening. They were just looking for an excuse. Clopening or not, let's acknowledge that that's a fun word.
It absolutely is, yeah.
Yes, and so obviously in that context, they're saying, okay, just one infraction and you're done. That's not normal. No, they're obviously, especially given the context about what they've said about unions, how they've fought unions tooth and nail, they're clearly trying to get rid of any union organizer. And by the way, Starbucks stock is plummeting. Starbucks is a company that largely appeals to people who are a little bit more on the left. That's why the right wing, I don't know why.
Limousine libs.
Yeah, I don't get it, right? But that's why Tucker Carlson attacks them on a regular basis, et cetera. And Howard Schultz, their CEO, he came back to be their CEO, he's their founder, was thinking about running as either a Democrat or an independent last time. Now it turns out he's super conservative on economic issues, but he considers himself a Democrat. Washington considers him a Democrat. But so now they're attacking their own customer base, going, no, we'll fire anyone that's doing union organizing, but come have coffee and hang out at Starbucks.
So it gets worse, Cenk. It gets much, much worse, okay? Because this union organizer's experience at Starbucks started to get worse because of how she was treated by another worker there. And the response from her employer was pretty disgusting. She said, my old manager started terrorizing me any way she could. I'd been getting sexually harassed by another partner at work, and she told me that I was lying about it. She said that if I told anybody the lie that he'd been sexually harassing me, it basically was grounds for termination and that I should watch my mouth.
When you go to your manager about sexual harassment and they say you should watch your mouth, why don't you just say, I mean, that's exactly when you should sue, right? So, look, there are situations where you could say things in the office that are outrageous and your manager will rightfully say, hey, wait, there's a better avenue to do that, right? And there's the right avenue to do that. But you can't say I'm being sexually harassed and the manager goes, why don't you shut your mouth? What? That's crazy.
But her coworkers, in showing solidarity and also witnessing what was going on, spoke up about it, and luckily that guy got fired. And on June 16th, the store voted 7-4 to unionize, and she was fired just 6 days later. Just 6 days later.
Gee, that's interesting. Come on, look, Starbucks has been absolutely brazen about this, and I would be shocked if the extra cost that they would have gotten through a union contract would have made anywhere near the difference that the market cap that they've lost because of their anti-union efforts. So it also doesn't make any economic sense. And so it looks like now Howard Schultz is on a personal ideological crusade that to fight the union no matter how much it costs them.
Yep.
And that just makes no sense at all. And don't come to us telling us it's a family and stuff. For small businesses, yes, okay? But for a giant corporation like Starbucks, this is not how a family acts.
Absolutely. And finally, Richard Minter, who is the organizing director for Workers United, gave us a statement. So this is a statement given to us. He says, the heinous attack by Starbucks against these partners is unlike any I have ever witnessed. Made up allegations, sinister plotting, targeting supporters, mean-spirited and meant to hurt the workers. Starbucks doesn't deserve such loyal, devoted staff. So they're fighting back against her termination. We'll follow this story and see if there are any updates in the future. But look, I think these stories are important because it shows you the people who take to the picket line, people who engage in the strikes, and that's of course after they've been unionized, they do put a lot on the line. Union organizers put a lot on the line, especially when they're up against a massive, highly successful corporation like Starbucks. But people are fighting back. They're sick of this, they're disgusted by this, and I'm just really happy to see people remaining defiant despite the retaliation they're likely to face.
Yep. Now, if you think we're done with Republican perverts, unfortunately we're not. Wait till you see what they're trying to outlaw in Texas. It's almost unbelievable. But they're Republicans, so you're gonna believe it. It's real, and it'll make all those Republicans that just moved to Texas, they're gonna move right on out if they win on this one. Okay, so we'll show you why when we return. Thanks for listening to the full episode of The Young Turks. Support our work, listen ad-free, access members-only bonus content, and more by subscribing to Apple Podcasts at apple.co/TYT. I'm your host, Cenk Uygur, and I'll see you soon.